Hi, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Erica. Thank you so much for clicking on my video. I would love to have you subscribe, like, comment, and if you're returning, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. So today's video is going to be dedicated to my dear friend, fellow creator, and collab partner, Ash, Makeup and Chaos. And of course, I will have their channel linked in my description box. A couple of weeks ago, I did another episode of my Would I or Wouldn't I series. I think I'm on part 5 now. And in that video, I showed one of my Nomad Cosmetics palettes. And Ash, in the comment section, asked me to rank all of my Nomad Cosmetics palettes. I don't know why I had never done that before. I think partially because I have 8 palettes from the brand. Well, 9 in total, but one of them I haven't used yet. And I think I kind of felt like I needed to have at least 10 palettes from a brand in order to rank them, and that's absolutely ridiculous. You could have 2 palettes from a brand and rank them. And also, I knew this was going to be very difficult because I love all of my Nomad Cosmetics palettes. And kind of depends on the day. You know, sometimes my opinions change or my preferences change, but I can honestly tell you that out of all of the Nomad Cosmetics palettes that I own, the palette that I chose for spot 1 and the palette that I chose for the last spot would remain the same, because that's just always kind of how it's been for me since I've gotten all of these palettes. Now, I do have 9 in total. However, 1 I still have not used yet, so I didn't rank that, but I am going to show it to you. And Dion from Dion Loves Makeup, she sent this to me. This is the Nomad Venice Simplon Express palette. And she got the Orient Express palette from Nomad, and that's twice the size of this palette, I believe. And all of these shades that are in this palette are in the larger palette. So she kind of didn't really feel like she needed to keep both of them. And I was thrilled that she sent this to me. And the reason why I haven't used this yet is because I'm holding off until I do a holiday look collab with one of my dear friends here on this platform. I'm not going to give that away because I feel like this is such a beautiful holiday color story. And I was pretty sure that I was going to be doing some sort of holiday look collab this year. At least I hope that I would. And I am. And I'm really excited to give this a try. I know Dion loved this palette and she created some beautiful looks with this. So I just didn't really want to rank a palette that I hadn't used yet. So now let's get into ranking the 8 palettes that I have from Nomad Cosmetics that I've actually used. And I want to be very clear here. These are not ranked this way because of the quality or the formula. Every single Nomad Cosmetics palette that I own has amazing quality, beautiful formula, the mattes and the shimmers, all of it. It's just stunning. I love the packaging of all of these palettes, but really how I rank these is based on their color stories and what my preferences are. And just kind of how these palettes speak to me, speak to my makeup loving heart. So let's start off with palette number 8. This is in the lowest ranked spot. This is the Nomad Cosmetics Tuscany Palette. And I did use this in a look yesterday, and I actually filmed this video last night, but I did have on a striped shirt, and one of the stripes was white. And when I was editing, that white stripe, because of the lights, just kept going, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. So I'm refilming this. And the look that I created with this palette was really pretty. This is a more neutral palette, of course. And it is a lovely color story, I would say, but it's a little softer. There's not a lot of depth in here. And you know, I do have this color story elsewhere in my collection, of course, but this is such a beautiful quality palette that I would much rather declutter another one of those palettes rather than this one. I will be holding on to this. I'm going to be doing my eyeshadow palette collection and declutter video soon, hopefully by the end of the year. If not, that will definitely be coming in January. And I am going to be holding on to this. This shimmer right here is so soft and so beautiful, and it applies beautifully. This shade right here, this kind of terracotta matte, is lovely for the outer corner. It's just that, I don't know, this palette, I don't think it's boring. Don't get me wrong, I do not think neutrals are boring, but in comparison to some of the other color stories that I have, this one is just not my absolute favorite. It's my least favorite out of the palettes that I have from Nomad. Palette number 7 is the Cartagena Magica palette. And if you're not familiar with Nomad Cosmetics, they base their palettes on certain areas of the world, which I think is really cool. And I love the packaging of this palette. It is very eye-catching. And this is a lovely color story. Really fun options in here. Some pinks, some oranges, kind of terracottas. These 2 shades right here are my absolute favorite in this palette, with this beautiful kind of olivey, but maybe a little bit of a lime green matte there too. And then we also have this beautiful kind of greeny gold shimmer as well. And I do like this color story, and it's a beautiful formula, beautiful quality. I mean, you will never ever hear me say that a Nomad Cosmetics palette does not have a beautiful quality and formula. But again, in terms of the color story and in relation to the other palettes that I have from this brand, this just doesn't absolutely wow me. I have created some beautiful looks with this palette. I've seen other creators create beautiful looks with this palette. I'm pretty sure that this palette is still available. I have not been onto the Nomad Cosmetics website for a long time because I'm trying to adhere to my no-buy until January. It's not easy. But if you are digging this color story, I highly recommend that you go onto the Nomad Cosmetics website and see if this is still available because it is a really beautiful palette. Palette number 6 is the Fetu Provence, and I love the packaging of this palette as well. This is a very romantic, whimsical, fairy tale type color story. The pinks in here, I don't always gravitate toward pinks. You know, I just think they look a little bizarre on me sometimes, and it's really hard for me to put a pink shade on my lower lash line and not look like I'm sick. Not that you have to do that with this palette because there's a lot of other options in here too, but I don't know, just not as many options as I would prefer to have in a palette and not as many options as I find in other Nomad Cosmetics palettes. But of course, this has beautiful quality, a very nice formula. The shimmer right here, this yellow shimmer is so gorgeous. I have used this before on my channel. I used a couple of these shades and this yellow shimmer. And I kind of felt like I got a little bit of grunge out of here, you know? And you look at this palette, I don't think that grunge necessarily pops into anybody's head, but the look that I created, I'm telling you, there's a little bit of grunge there. This is lovely. If you like this color story and you're wanting to try Nomad Cosmetics, or you've already tried it but you don't have this, I do recommend picking this up. It's just not necessarily my absolute favorite color story from the brand. Palette number 5 is the Whistler Snow Lodge, and I got this for myself, I think in January, and it sat in the box for at least a month. Then it went on my shelf for a few more months. And then I did a collab with Renee, and we took pictures of palettes that we had in our collection and sent those pictures to each other. And she chose this palette for me. Thank goodness, because I finally got to use it, and she chose obviously the shades out of here too. And this is gorgeous. I love the look that I created. I love the shades that Renee chose for me. And the thing that I love about this too is that there's so many fun options in here. Blues, greens, golds, reds, kind of burgundies. You know, we have some brown and black down here. This shade right here has got that cool white base to it, but really flippy on the lid, kind of pink to blue, maybe a little bit of purple in there too. So really fun options. And this was really hard for me to rank because I love this color story. I really do. But because I've only used this palette the one time, I don't have a lot of experience with it. I thought, oh, I don't know that I should rank it any higher. But man, now I'm kind of regretting my ranking here. No, I'm not. I'm just going to stick with it. But I'm really happy that I picked up this palette, and I really hope that I will be using this a lot more very soon. Palette number 4 is the America's Parks palette. And man, this is such a gorgeous color story. And this is getting closer to where I live when you talk about my favorite type of color story that's within a palette, because I love the earthiness. We do have some grunge in here, I feel, maybe more bright grunge. And then of course, I love green eyeshadows. So we have this beautiful row of green in this one over here as well. And I just love the looks that I have created with this palette. Really fun. And just the more of the colors that I prefer, the color story that I prefer. And I wasn't going to get this palette either. I don't know why. I thought, well, I don't need that. I have that color story elsewhere. Who cares? This is beautiful. It's amazing quality, and I just love having this palette. Palette number 3 is the Tokyo Harajuku palette. And this is my favorite packaged palette from Nomad. I just think it's gorgeous and super cute. Bunnies and kitties and stars and bows and ladybugs. I just love it. And this color story literally looks like a birthday party blew up in here. And you know, I was really intimidated by pastel shades, and I still am in some senses. Sometimes I just don't really know how to put them together and if they're gonna look decent on my lids. Now, I saw Katie from Makeup for Last Time create a, 3 looks video, I think, with this palette. And I was so blown away by how beautiful her looks were. And the cool thing about this palette is that you have some depth here. And she used this shade, I think she popped, I can't remember which shade she popped over the top of it, but she popped another shade over the top of it. And it just provided this beautiful depth to her look. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to go onto their website. I'm going to get this palette. This is the first palette I ever picked up from Nomad. And I opened it up when I got it, and I saw this row of shimmers. Now, I'd seen people use these shimmers. I'd heard Amy from Amy Loves Makeup talk about how mind-alteringly amazing these shimmers were. But when I saw them for the first time in person, I was like, oh yeah. This shade right here, it looks pink in the pan, but when you put it on your lids, it's like this icy blue. It is so amazing. And then we have a row of satins here and then a row of mattes. And this is such a fun palette to use. It really is. And it's really helped me get over my kind of irrational fear of pastel shades. I love having this palette. And these shimmers, I mean, I do have some other really pretty shimmers in my collection. And I do have the one from Gourmand Girls, the Ethereal palette, which is pretty damn amazing. But these are just something else. I mean, they're just so cool. And I do think that this palette is still available. So if you're wanting to try pastels, or you already love pastels, but you don't have this palette, I highly recommend picking it up. Palette number 2 is the Fire and Ice Iceland palette. Now, I was not going to get this palette. I had absolutely no desire to pick this up. I mean, I thought it was pretty, but it just looked a little disjointed to me. I'm not super experienced with putting eye looks together, as you well know if you've been watching my channel for a while. And I just felt very intimidated by this color story, and I just felt like I wouldn't know how to put the shades together. Also, there's a lot of blues in here, and I used to be terrified of blue eyeshadows. I've gotten over it. I've conquered my fear of blue eyeshadows. Yes. And so I just was like, I'm going to pass on this one. But Steph, not your basic Steph, she's my mentor, my best friend, my soul sister. This is her favorite palette from Nomad. And I watched her create looks with this on her channel. And I watched other creators create looks with this palette on their channel. And I thought, you know, I need to get over it and I need to pick it up, because if Steph loves this palette as much as she does, and Steph has very impeccable taste in makeup, I thought, you know, I need to get over myself and get this. Well, she beat me to it. She sent this to me for my birthday last summer, or this past summer. I've done collabs with Pia and Dion using this palette, and we just had an absolute blast using this palette and creating our looks. I am so happy that Steph sent this to me. It is gorgeous. So many fun, beautiful options together. And even though it looks like it might not work, might not go together, these shades absolutely go together, and you can create beautiful, dynamic, diverse looks with this palette. And I almost ranked this number 1, but once you see what I have in the number 1 spot, you're going to understand, because I've raved about my number 1 palette many times. But I'm really happy that I got over my weird fear of this palette and that I own it now. Palette number 1, and I'm sure you guys know what palette this is if you have been watching my channel for any length of time, because I have raved about this palette 1,000,001 times here on my channel. This is the Berlin Underground. And I had seen this palette multiple times on the Nomad website, and for whatever reason, I just never picked it up. I don't know why. I mean, just dumb, because I love this color story. I love grungy, earthy. I mean, it's gorgeous. Look at it. And Dion and I, we were talking about doing our first collab together, and she had recently picked up this palette, and she said, you know, it's on sale, and based on what I've seen from you on your channel so far, and you know, you talking about your preferences, I think you would really like this palette because it is gorgeous. So I went onto the website, and it was a great deal. So I got the palette, and we did do a collab with this. We created a light grunge look and a deep grunge look using this palette, which you can absolutely do with this. And then I've also done a palette bingo with Andy from Andy Does Stuff using this palette. And I was just absolutely floored by how much I love this palette. It's just incredible. I mean, the color story isn't necessarily super like over the top or like, you know, bright, vibrant, you know, like there's things that people will look for in a color story. And I don't know that this necessarily says that, but it just speaks to my makeup loving heart on every level. Most of these shades in here are that satiny consistency, and they apply so beautifully, and they blend so beautifully, and they work really beautifully together. And I've created several looks with this palette, and I have not been disappointed with one. I do have a look on my eyelids today out of this palette. This is definitely in my top 5 palettes of all time. It may even be in my top 3 palettes of all time, but definitely my favorite palette from this brand. I don't know that it will ever not be my favorite palette from this brand. You know, they release beautiful palettes a lot, but I don't know, this just has my heart and soul. I just think it has everything I could ever want in a palette, and I absolutely am madly in love with it. I think I've said that about 25 times now. So there you go, Ash. I ranked all of my Nomad Cosmetics palettes for you. And I would love to know if you guys have any of these palettes and what you think of them, how you would rank them, what you think of my ranking. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And like I said at the very beginning, I will have Ash's channel, Makeup and Chaos, linked in my description box. If you guys have not gone to their channel yet and subscribed, I highly recommend doing so. They are so very talented, so beautiful, and one of my dearest friends here on this platform. And I would love to chat with you guys about these Nomad Cosmetics palettes in the comments section. Bring it on. I love to do that. You know that. And I'm really happy that I did rank these. It was not easy, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. It was actually a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your busy day or evening to sit down and watch my video. It always means the world to me. If you have subscribed or you would like to subscribe, do not forget to hit the notification bell. That way you're aware of all of my future uploads. I cannot wait to see you guys again in my next video. But in the meantime, please take care of yourself, be well, safe, happy, and I hope to see you very soon. Thanks again, you guys. Take care. Bye.
Drop it.